Okay, I swear this is going to be the last Warhammer review that I do for a while, but at least we're done with Dawn of War 2. What a great way to end, considering this is one of my favourite kinds of content, standalone expansion. Despite being called a Dawn of War 2 expandalone, it has very little to do with the base game, and bear in mind we're talking about everything here. The stories, mechanics, features and armies harken back to the first game, which also had 6,000 expansions backing it up. Where the second base game of the series is more about commanding small units with named heroes, Retribution combines it with the first game's emphasis on expandable units, the capture of bases, and the annihilation of the enemy's turf. Because of this, it makes me question why it's not just called Dawn of War 3. Featuring the armies battling in the subsector of the first and second game, the story takes place after the events of Chaos Rising, while also referencing the events of the first game. The overarching plot is that the chapter master of the Blood Ravens, Kyrus, has betrayed the Marines and is using the influence of Khorne to break up the Emperor's forces. This leads to a mutiny amongst the Imperial Guardsmen. The Inquisition wanted to start Exterminatus. I should just point out that Exterminatus is when entire planets are destroyed, leaving no innocent or guilty, heretical or fanatical being alive. The Inquisition use this as a final, if not permanent, solution, and have no qualms about killing so many innocents just to enact the greater good. Inquisition. So perfect. Where was I? Oh yeah, this leads to all kinds of problems, and each of the playable armies are connected and decide the final outcome of the game, and this is the first great thing about Retribution, the multiple campaigns. The first and second base game plus Chaos Rising one could only play as the Blood Ravens, but Retribution allows for far more freedom and exploration of the characters, which before were stereotypical villains. Besides the Eldar, they made me question the Blood Ravens of Dawn of War 2. Anyway, each army has its own dialogues before, during and after each mission, and starts out in different areas, so you'll be able to see the different perspectives and motives behind each quest. It's a great way of making the story more believable, though the more armies you play, the more it contradicts itself if you try to tie them together too much.
Okay boys, let's not hit those wagons just yet. We shall use that supply station for a proper ambush.
Not to mention that your heroes aren't accompanied by 2 or 3 people besides them, so in the case of my orcs, Mr. Nailbrain doesn't come with 2 more gunners, or Spookums isn't backed by 2 more commandos. In order to become more formidable and face the overwhelming forces of the map, you'll need to bring in reinforcements. And this is where you'll develop a love-hate relationship with the expansion, depending on whether you like the first Dawn of War game over the second and vice versa. Additional troops and support was unheard of in the second game, whereas generating soldiers of different types is common practice for players of the first game. As a fan of the second game, I found it hard to get used to reinforcements dying and not being able to be revived, and also being able to deploy with even more choice than before really threw me off. Even before a mission starts, you can choose to deploy with either a single hero or more advanced versions of existing units, such as melee, ranged or support. Even more alien to people who have only played the second game is resource management, as there's more to your characters than just health and energy. By acquiring power, requisition and zeal, you'll be able to bring in new forces, all of which can be accumulated by capturing bases and beacons scattered around the map. These replace the foundries and shrines of the previous game, and I have to admit it's a nice improvement considering there's more you can do with these new resources. Plus it's nice to be able to have more unit types than 4 named characters and have to micromanage the hell out of their customization. But micromanagement still exists in Retribution, and this will appeal to the fans of the first game way more than the second, as you've got more people to work with. When you start to reach your population cap, which determines how many troops you can have at any one time, you'll have to assign them to targets and choose new ones each time they've slain them. This is perfectly normal, but the friendly AI finds it tough to attack a target a few yards away, so having to select individual ones that are lagging behind and regroup, fall back or take defensive positions is an absolute pain. I had enough trouble keeping tabs on my forces in Dawn of War 2. The reason why I prefer the aforementioned game system is because when I looked at my units then, I knew what abilities and war gear they had, and though I can upgrade the reinforcements damage, health and energy pool, this doesn't apply to all units of that type, and it's lost when they die, making for wasteful spending of valuable resources. And even after the mission, reinforcements manage to screw you when you can choose 1 of 3 items as a reward for success. You can either choose war gear, a new unit type you can summon, or an ability for an existing unit. The latter 2 trump gear, and you'll be at a disadvantage the further into the game you go if you choose only gear. War gear has taken a step down since Chaos Rising in that it's like the base game where I rarely notice the procs or boosts to health and energy. Then again, it's a worthy sacrifice for removing the chaff of the old skill point system, which has been replaced with something I can appreciate a lot more. When you level up, you get a single skill point to spend on your health, damage or energy trees, each claimed to have a big impact on your character or their respective unit type. For the most part this is true, but the rest of the time these abilities aren't noticeable, and when you can buy a flat damage, health or energy upgrades during missions, it seems pointless. What surprised me is that every army has its different unit types and heroes, and with them comes different skill tree and lots of starting abilities. Such variety adds to the replay value, which at this point in the series is solely needed to keep fans who are getting a bit tired toward the end of the first playthrough actively invested. It's made better when every army has its different weapons and armor, which moves me onto the visuals. The best looking thing about the game is the character models, but there's few new models as most are recycled from Dawn of War 2. That I can forgive, but I'm shocked that there's only one new map, and that's the final one. And once again the sound design fails to impress. However, there's an abundance of voice lines from all the featured armies both before and during missions. The Orcs have the best stuff, whereas the Tyranids have practically none. It's just the ramblings of the hive mind.
No hot, no deal. Kill your own posh humies and leave the Orcs out of it. I's got more pointy-eared gits to stomp for blasting me ship out the void anyways.
Huh. You do not really think that the Eldar shot your ship down, do you, Captain?
You twiggy thing! You think you can sword an Orc's cruiser and walk away?
Before I move on, I'd like to make a point about the performance. Now, for the most part the game runs fine, but on many occasions there were cutscenes that failed to run properly and caused the game to crash, and during the Bloodraven campaign I couldn't finish the game because it kept crashing during the final mission. I know I said in my recent review that it's my obligation to complete games before reviewing them, but I also said in that review that I'll still review a game if I couldn't reach the end due to bugs and glitches. So now it's time now to move on to my premature final thoughts. Retribution is a game that is big on ideas but small on delivery. Missions start out in the style of the second Dawn of War game with limited resources and careful navigation of the battlefield. Before long you're playing a game more akin to the first of the series with a gigantic force sweeping across the battlefield and trying to repopulate your army. The transition between one kind of gameplay and another is jarring, and you can't play Retribution like it's a bog standard RTS at the beginning. Not when there's no regenerating resources and the few you begin with don't help at all. It doesn't help the flow of the missions, and for people new to this genre it may be confusing as to how to improve one's play. Despite having a few peeps with the gameplay and being unsure of what to expect as I play through it, I rather enjoy trying out each of the armies and seeing their differences. However, that's only from their character perspectives. The mechanics and the stories changed very little. And that's the worst thing about Retribution, or at least the most disappointing. Despite having 6 armies to choose from, the plot has almost no changes besides who the boss of a particular level is, or how your troops talk to the non-player characters. It just feels underwhelming for a game that boasts to have multiple campaigns. In a way, I'm glad that the campaign regardless of army is about 8 to 10 hours, because doing the same missions regardless of race becomes tiresome. Without missions or story arcs that are exclusive to single armies, it's almost not worth having the choice. To put it bluntly, Retribution is a mixed bag. Sure, it's a good RTS, but I don't rate it any higher than Dawn of War 1 or 2 because it's both of those games, but less. I can't recommend it unless you like both games and their respective expansions equally and are willing to play the game multiple times with different armies. What should have led the Dawn of War games to an epic crescendo led them to an epic disappointment. Still, while getting footage for this review, I did have a good time playing it over and over again for the different campaigns. Anyway, until the next time, I'm Johnbonne, your number one source for number 2 games, and I'll see you later. Ta-ta for now.